So mindfulness is important. If there's no mindfulness, then unwholesome mind will arise. So you have to check the mind for the mindfulness. If there's mindfulness, then the mind is wholesome. Otherwise, you have an unwholesome mind. Unwholesome mind means unwholesome cetana, volition, means unwholesome karma, and it will give rise to suffering resultant. The Bojjhanga is important subject, which the Buddha reminded the monks that monks should understand, should go deeply into the subject of the 7 factors of enlightenment. If you want to gain enlightenment, then we need to develop these 7 factors. If you do not develop these 7 factors, then there will be no enlightenment. So even before the Buddha passed away to Nibbana, this is one of the subjects. The Buddha repeated to the monks that they should practice mindfulness of these 7 factors of enlightenment. Now tonight, factors is the Dhamma Vichaya, the investigation or looking deeply into mind and body. Now again, there are these 4 factors attached to this practice of bringing out mindfulness. The meditator recognizes that the enlightenment factor of investigation is present within. Now, meditators develop this awareness of knowing that there is these factors present in my mind, that you have developed this factor in your mind. So, do you know that there is this factor in your mind? Do you know or not? And again, O monks, a monk recognize there is no factors, investigating factors in the mind. Now again, this mindfulness, to know there is no investigating factors in the mind. So how do you know? How do you know there is or there is no these factors in the mind? So how do you know? So let us go into the deeper into this subject to understand. So Dhamma Vichaya is different from the Vitakka. Vitakka means to apply your mind to the object. Initial application of the mind towards the object, that is vitakka. And vitakka is always present in the mind. The mind will direct it to the objects, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching. That is vitakka. So it is present all the time when the mind arises. But vichaya is different. Vichaya is looking deeply into the objects, whether internally or externally. Now, a meditator recognize the enlightenment factor investigation is not present in the mind. Now, how does he recognize that? He recognizes that when the mind is caught up in the flow of conditioning by objects, contexts, and senses, thereby experiencing sadness, happiness, or neutral mental states. Now this is called mere happening. Mere happening. In other words, when the mind flows in our daily life, when we are so busy, When we are always depending on seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, when you're doing a lot of things, wholesome or unwholesome, when we are very busy, then we know that the enlightenment factor of investigation is not present in the mind, mere conditioning. When you become happy one moment, become sad the next moment, become neither happy nor sad, just plain bored. So it is not there. In your daily life, when you are caught up with a lot of works, you have no time, no space to detach yourself and look deeply into mind and body. So it is not present. So in such a case, after some time, the mind would be confused. The mind would say, what is life all about? If life just work, is it life just like that? Being like that, earning a living, getting married, having children, growing old and die? Is it just like that? So it is called by mere conditioning, relying on objects, contact, senses. Then you know that investigating factor is not present in the mind. So could such type of mind gain enlightenment? No. Such type of mind could not gain enlightenment. So in other words, such type of mind could be happy, could gain merits, could do a lot of meritorious action, could give, could even keep sila, 5 precepts, but yet they could not gain insight into reality. Why? Because investigating factor of mind is not present. So no matter what you call yourself, Buddhist, Christians, or whatever religion, as long as these mental factors, Dhamma Vicaya, is not developed, then the mind could not penetrate into this reality of mind and body. So in that way, it is absence. The meditator knows that this factor is absence. And again, by actively pursuing, searching for pleasing, pleasant, enticing, stimulating objects for sense enjoyment, then Dhamma Vicaya is again absence. Now a mind that is constantly searching for enjoyment in objects, for the 6 senses, smelling, tasting, touching, constantly pursuing for such enticing object, then you find again Dhamma Vicaya is absence, is not present. So to see the absence, it is quite easy to see. If you look inside or outside, and if you see such states of mind, you know that Dhamma Vicaya is not developed. Dhamma Vicaya needs to be developed for enlightenment. And only when it becomes strong, along with the other factors, example, the sati, the mindfulness, which comes first. Without sati, there will be no Dhamma Vicaya. Without mindfulness, there will be no Dhamma investigation or looking deeply into mind and body. So the sati is bringing out these factors, the mindfulness to note whether it is present or absent. It is absence, then the way to develop Dhamma Vicaya. So therefore sati comes first. Mindfulness comes first, bringing out the Dhamma Vicaya. Again, if one is stuck with concepts, stuck with concept or worldly concept, for example, one has one-track mind of material possession, thinking money is everything, it is power, it is fame, it is happiness. And if the mind is one-tracked, pursuing of belonging, then Dhamma Vicaya is not present. So mind when constantly search for material gain, then Dhamma Vicaya is absence. Now this can be seen quite clearly, the states of mind. So we are going into a more deeper subject. A more deeper subject. It is not merely ordinary subject of giving, dana, of sila, of abstaining, keeping precepts. We are going into subject that is very deep and profound. We are going to the subject of enlightenment. Such types of subjects are seldom taught to the lay people during the Buddha's time. The Buddha will merely or mostly talk about doing good to the lay people, to do dana, to give. The Buddha will talk about sila, the 5 precepts, to abstain. And the other dhamma, which are profound, they are merely taught to the monks. They are merely taught to the monks. But he who meditates are just like monks. He who practices the insight meditation, wisdom meditation to gain wisdom, then it is just like a monk. When you're seeking enlightenment, mind needs to go deeper into the subject that leads to enlightenment. So Dhamma Vicaya is a very profound subject. Very profound. And once you go deeper into this profound subject, you know that just belief is not enough. Just having faith is not enough. And the world, religion, mostly, they are just belief. They are not taught the factors of enlightenment. So therefore, they believe, and in doing good, in giving, in keeping morality, they'll be born in the Deva world, or even in the Brahma world, if they practice tranquility, meditation, and gain absorption. But they would not gain enlightenment if they miss out these factors. Trapped by views and belief, one would not develop Dhamma Vicaya. There are those who are strongly trapped in views, in beliefs, such as anicang as nicang. For example, those who think that there is permanence in this mind and body would not be able to develop Dhamma Vicaya. They think that there is permanence in this mind. This mind is eternal. This body is eternal. When this body passes away, there's another body that goes on to the next body. So they believe in niccang, permanence. And once they believe, have such type of belief, when things starts to change, then they fall into mental pain and suffering because they could not accept change. When they believe that there is no change, that things are permanent, so they hold fast, they hold on very tightly to those things that produce pleasure. So they have a lot of fear in the mind. When these things are lost, then they suffer enormous pain. Why? Because the absence of Dhamma Vicaya, the absence of looking deeply into the mind and body, which is constantly changing, not the same in one moment. It keep on changing and changing all the time. Mind is changing, body is changing. And if they have this Dhamma Vicaya, then they would not be hurt mentally when things start to change. Or taking dukkha as sukha, taking suffering as happiness. They think that mind is happiness, body is happiness, and when they experience difficulties or suffering, then they could not accept suffering. Then they become very angry, become very hostile. Then they develop a lot of hatred and remorse because they could not accept suffering, because they think that everything is happiness, their birthright. Happiness belongs to them. And if they do not have happiness, then something is wrong. Then somebody is taking away the happiness, or somebody is destroying the happiness. So they could not accept pain because they have this view that everything is happiness. Mind and body is happiness. External object is happiness. It brings them happiness. And if it does not bring them happiness, then they could not accept the unhappiness, the pain. So therefore, with such type of views and beliefs, Dhamma Vicaya is absence in the mind. So internally and externally, when you see such states of mind, you know that Dhamma Vicaya is not present in the mind. Lastly, anatta as atta, seeing the non-substantial as substantial, something there in the mind and body which is always, forever assisting. Feeling is assisting, perception is assisting. Now, the meditators then knows that the Dhamma Vicaya is not present within, in the mind, when they are trapped, when they are not practicing meditation, when the mind is not having this mindfulness of detachment, of observing the objects of mind and body. They are entrapped in the above, as mentioned. The meditator's aware he can or how to develop investigating factors of enlightenment within. Then the meditator knows how to develop. Now, how are we going to develop this Dhamma Vicaya within? Now, you see the importance of this Dhammanupassana. Because you need to understand these factors that are important for realization. Whether it is present or it is absent. If it is absent, you must know how to develop these factors so that you can gain enlightenment. If you do not know how to practice, how to develop these factors in your mind, then how could you gain enlightenment? And you find your practice go nowhere. The practice is sluggish and very slow if the factors are missing. So, how does a meditator then develop these factors? To look deeply into the aggregates, the 5 aggregates. For those beginners, we'll go into the 5 aggregates later on. But for those who are already gone through that, I will briefly go through them. The aggregates of mental formation. What is mental formation? Mental formations are those mind that keeps on forming thoughts, thinking. These are mental formation. Depending on what? Depending on objects, contact, senses. Whenever there is these objects, contact with senses, then the mind forms thinking, formation. They are called mental formation. And if you look deeply into formation, you become aware that the mind changing all the time. The mind is not self. The mind is not somebody controlling it. The mind just roll on. Just formation, disappear. Formation, disappear. It is not permanent. The characteristics are constant changing, right? And if one is aware, become detached from these mental formation, then suffering could not take hold in the mind. So the mind would not grasp on to the objects that produce repeated suffering. So that is the practice of Dhamma Vicaya, which is essential. Now, if you don't practice Dhamma Vicaya, you would not be aware of the mental characteristics, and if the mind constantly hold on to the objects, then it produces disturbances. It gets absorbed into the object, and you could not see the characteristics of the mind. If you can't see the characteristics of the mind, you could not gain enlightenment. You could not be detached. Only when you know that the mind is forming and disappearing, then there is no I in the mind. If there's an I, you could control the mind. You could say the mind stop thinking and it stopped. You could say the mind now think properly to solve this problem, then it will solve this problem. But there is no I to command mind. There's an I to manipulate, to control. It's just a formation depending on the past, present characteristics of the mind. Perception. Now, to see perception as perception, we perceive things. We perceive memories. They are merely memories. So we should not think that these memories is everlasting. It is forever. They are merely memories. Sometimes we hold on to bad memories in the past, and therefore the present become real again. We are stuck, repeated memories, then it become real, and it causes the same suffering that it has caused us long time ago. Repeated pain. Why? Because we hold on to the memories. They are merely perception. They are merely memories that we have experienced, and it has passed away. It is no longer real. They are mere memories. There are times when we hold on to our memories. When we are old, we like to think, once I was young, once I could do that, once I could do this. When I was young, well, a lot of happy things happened. I enjoy myself. But now I'm old, so I can't do anything. Now I'm sad because I can't do anything. Now again, that is holding on to memories, to perception, perceiving what has passed. And sometimes we have bad memories. We become very remorseful. We think of all the bad things that has happened, and we hold on to that memories, thinking that they are forever there. real, but it's no longer real. It is past, merely an experience. And if you hold on to them, it is dukkha. It is painful. It is suffering. It is anatta, non-substance. Just as like a bubble, when it comes out to the surface, it disappears. Just as like a candlelight, when it burns until the last wick, the last strings there, they disappear. So it's memories. Perception is just the same way. It is anatta, nothing left. It is nothing left. When the fire, when it blows off, there's no more fire. It is nothing left. It is anatta, substanceless. So is perception. It is substanceless. Only when you look deeply into perception, investigate, look deeply into perception, then the mind becomes detached, becomes peaceful and calm and knowing, knowledge, insight appears. You can see it very clearly. Feelings too. Now you see into feelings. Feeling always comes and goes. When you meditate, you experience a lot of pain, and then it comes numbness, then it disappears. Feelings too in the mind. Days when you are happy, days when you are sad. And you can't even hold on to happy feelings. As they come, they go. You can't hold on to it. You can't say, I like happy feelings. I don't want it to go away. I don't like painful feeling. Please go away. You could not do that as you please. It just come by itself. It just go away. Now feelings are constantly like that. Again, it is anatta, substanceless. You can't hold on to it. For one moment it's there, next moment is gone. Now if you could penetrate, go deeply into feeling, then Dhamma Vicaya appears in the mind. Then you know that the investigating factor is present in my mind, because you could see it arising, you could see it disappearing. And so feeling cannot be trusted, cannot be dependent on, cannot hold on to. The moment you hold on to happiness, next moment it is gone. It is just like that. Come and go, come and go. Form too cannot be hold on to. Form, just as you're rising and falling, the elements. So if you practice Dhamma Vicaya, then you see not only this body, but you also see the elements, the subtle form, or the ultimate conditioned form, which are merely elements, wind elements, motion. Keep on moving, that is all. We are moving all the time, action. The body is a lot of air, motion internally, and expression externally. You walk, you sit, you lie down, you eat, you bathe. They are merely changing the form all the time. But if you sit still and look deep into it, you see the air rising, continue, disappearing. Again, rising, continuing, disappearing. Just as the heat, just as the heat in your body, just as the hardness and softness that you touch and feel. Now these are merely elements, and Dhamma Vicaya is present when you are practicing meditation. When you bring up the mindfulness and you watch it with detachment, you see this mind, see this object, then you know that in this moment, Dhamma Vicaya is present in my mind. So you should know. But if you just rise, fall, rise, fall, rise, fall, again you know Dhamma Vicaya. is not present in your mind. There's no investigating factors. You are getting a lot of samadhi, a lot of peacefulness, but you do not see the change. Do not see the beginning, do not see the continue, do not see the end. So Dhamma Vicaya is not present. So you must, once you gain samadhi, you must direct your attention strongly to the beginning point or to the ending point of your objects, whether it is body, feeling, or mind. All right? Consciousness. Now we come to vijnana consciousness. It is changing all the time. Now you see, now you hear, now you smell, now you taste, now you think. Constantly, we are attracted by external objects depending on each consciousness because they take different objects. Right? Your eye cannot take smell. Only the nose senses take smell. Your ear cannot see. Only the eye senses see. So each one has its own function, its own objects. So therefore, all the time we have different objects, contact with different senses. So we don't have one sense and one object all the time. So it constantly moves around, objects and senses. So it's forever changing. It is not stagnant. And it is not permanent. And if we cling to the senses, it is not possible because it changes. You can't cling to the senses. Then, we come to the four factors. The first one is to recognize enlightenment factors. Is the investigating factors is present. The second factors is the second point is recognize it is not present in the mind. The third point is the meditators know how to bring out, to cultivate investigating factors. The fourth point is the meditator become aware of the manner to maintain and make strong the investigating factors. Now what is the fourth point? The fourth point is to maintain, develop further the enlightenment factor of investigation present in him. So how would you make your Dhamma Vicaya strong? You got to develop your chanta, strong intention to develop the factors in your mind by averting or directing your mind constantly as much as possible to these mind and body phenomena. In other words, whenever you are free, whenever you have the time, just stay with your mind and body internally first. When it is strong, you can also stay externally. That is one way of developing, make your Dhamma Vicaya strong. If you don't, if you just let your mind go everywhere the mind wants to go, if you let the mind objects control the senses, then the Vicaya would not develop. So to develop strong sanya, perception, to develop strong perception of the mind and body, perception. So you got to keep noting the body as elements so that you would not get into confusion that the body is permanent, the body is happiness, the body is self. Now if you get into such type of mental states, then you experience a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, right? When you think the body is happiness, but when the body is sick, experience a lot of pain, then you could not accept suffering, could not accept. Then you think, alamak, why am I sick? Why should I be sick? I'm so young, why must I be sick? Why can't other people be sick? So we could not accept, because we expect the body to be pleasant, to be happiness all the time. But when you meditate, you know the body is painful. When you sit doing nothing, you experience a lot of pain, a lot of itchiness, a lot of cramp, a lot of numbness, a lot of painful feelings, sensation arising to this body without doing anything, by just sitting still. The nature of the body manifests the characteristics. The characteristics of this body is painful. Now, if you acknowledge it with this investigation of the mind, then there's this acceptance, this knowledge that the body is painful. And so you will not be strongly affected when pain arises in this body, because you already expect it, because you already know it, and you already might prepare for it. So you would experience less mental pain than those who think otherwise, than those who think that the body is a lot of pleasure. So the body is suffering, the body is painful, the body is non-entity. This body is not self. It is just a body. It is just an element. There is no self in this body. It is just a body, consists of elements. Now, if you could see it clearly, then you would not be affected. When you grow old, when you get sick, when you decay, when the body decay, when there is dying, there will be no fear. But if you don't see it, then the mind will be greatly affected by the changing of this body. Because the nature of birth is the constantly changing to adulthood, and from there the changing to decay, and finally the passing away of this element, when the body no longer comes together, when the elements split out, no longer comes together, become weak, and so they dissolve themselves. Now that is the mere phenomena. And if you have Dhamma Vichaya, look deeply, constantly, and see these phenomena, then the mind will not be bewildered, mind will not be confused, mind would not have fear, the mind would not have remorse or sadness when there comes a time for the body to pass away. So the Arahants, Buddha, there is no fear, there is no disturbances. The Buddha knows that when the body disintegrated, separation, it would not come again. There will be no more lives, because lives is suffering. When there is life, means there is birth, there is old age, diseases, sicknesses, and death. So the Buddha just see the body as merely elements, nothing else but elements. Thus, to associate with the wise, it is important to listen to Dhamma talk. It is necessary to read Dhamma books. Of course, there are some who do not like to read, then you should listen to Dhamma talks. Deep Dhamma talks, the Buddha say, deep Dhamma talks, so that you could follow deeply and you can gain deep understanding. But if you were to listen superficially, a lot of stories, a lot of joy, a lot of hoo-hoo, ha-ha, they're very happy, but you go home, everything you forget. But you need to listen to deep Dhamma talks so that you can practice deeply. If you listen to superficial Dhamma talks, it will not bring you deeply into your practice. So you have to find some books. They are very good, very deep books, very profound books. Those who have meditated, those who have realized, those who have insight. Such are very good books. If you can't meet the person, or he may have passed away, but it is very beneficial to slowly go into such book. It is like jewels, like diamonds, something so precious, because you can gain very deep knowledge if you read such type of books. So, to associate with the wise, people who have experience, people who understand the Dhamma deeply. So, when strongly developed with other factors, it leads to penetration and realization. So that is the second factors of enlightenment. Now, it is a deep subject, but you should listen to it again and again and try to understand it, because you need to develop it. You need to see whether you have it or not in the mind, whether there is this vichaya in your mind, or there is this absence of vichaya in your mind. If it is absence, then you won't gain enlightenment. In other words, your practice is not sufficient. You have not utilized, you have not gone deep enough in your practice. So you are merely on the surface, just developing samadhi, some peacefulness of mind, and get some certain degree of contentment, and that is that. But if you are ambitious, if you want to go deeper, then you should practice the Dhamma Vichaya. Okay? So tonight I have talked about the second factors. Next week we will go to the third factors of enlightenment. There are 7, and each one has 4 ways of mindfulness. Whether it is there or it is not there. Then if it is not there, what are you going to do about it? You've got to practice it. And once you practice it, then you've got to maintain it. So instead of hindrances, where you have 5 factors, Dhamma Bojjhanga has 4 factors. Right? Any question for tonight? Is it very difficult to understand? Would you want me to repeat it again? Explain more example, more detail? Any question? Yes. Could you please speak in the mind?
Brother James, I thought we're supposed not to investigate when we meditate.
Yes. So I would rather use the word looking deeply into the objects, not just the surface. Rising, falling, rising, falling. Deeply means it is rising. What? It is rising? Oh, it's rising, beginning, it stops. Then go on, and it stops. It go on, and it stops, and it stops. And then it falls again, and it stops. And it falls, it stops, it stops, it stops. And why is it stop 5 times when it goes up and stop 4 times when it goes down? Now it is the knowing. The knowing that is not superficial. Like this is beauty. Then when it is superficial, then you say, oh, I got a long nose and that is beautiful. I got a very light skin and that is beautiful. Now that is called superficial concepts. But if you look deeply into this body, then they are merely elements. It is not beauty or ugliness. They are merely elements. Now that is called looking deeply. But most of the book, it is interpreted as investigation. To look, to investigate into this element. This air element. Is it rising or is it falling? So when it is falling, don't say rising. When it's rising, don't say falling. To investigate, to see it deeply. So it is not thinking about it. Now, if you are thinking about it, then it is just thinking. Cinta nupassana, cinta. Oh, it is now rising and stopping and rising. Then it stops. So you do not have to think about it. You experience the object deeply. So investigation, the thinking part is the basic, beginner's part. When you think about it, oh, this is suffering, then what will take me out of suffering? Oh, then I must come and listen to the Dhamma. I must practice the Noble Eightfold Path. Now this is right thinking, right concept. But when you practice meditation, you experience directly into the object, but you experience deeply into the object rather than mere surface. They say feeling, okay, feeling, pain. But pain is merely a concept. You will see what type of pain. Then you know, oh, it is cutting, it is poking, it is jumping, it is hot, it is cold, it is no longer pain. The pain is just a concept. Oh, pain, my leg is pain. But if you look deeply into pain, you find that it is not pain. It is a certain type of feelings. Get a point or not?
Yeah.
Huh?
Which means,
Yes.
Brother James, that means we look into every movement of it.
If possible.
Okay, now I understand.
Yeah. When your mindfulness is strong, you could see it very clearly every moment. That is what leads to enlightenment. Good question. Any question? Because you got to know this subject. It is very important subject. So don't think Dhammanupassana is not important. Don't think Dhammanu is not important. Dhammanupassana is important too. If you do not know what is hindrances, if you do not know what you need to develop, then you will not gain enlightenment. All right, see you next week. May you all be well, peaceful and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.